I can't quite see the screen, but roughly, I am living, where am I? Can I put my hand there? Yeah, I'm right about, you can see where my finger is, basically right behind my fingers where I'm currently living. Where the hell over there? And I've never ran around any of these mountains back over here, anywhere around here, so I'm starting to get to know them now. Anyway, let's get some knowledge shared. More knowledge. I'm behind in sharing knowledge. Listen to this one. Here's a title. 2 Bigfoot encounters. One is incredible. I think they all are. Hey man, just found a YouTube channel 3 weeks ago, and I've been binge watching your channel since then. Please feel free to use my name at any time on the broadcast. Alright, what's your name? Doug Messer. Okay, Doug, thanks for that. I have 2 stories. One is mine, the other is from a friend of mine who's a pastor at a church. Therefore, I cannot tell this story in fear of excommunication from the church. Well, what the hell's he doing at that church then? He's going to church where he's scared of the people? How creepy is that? Here we go. My story, summer in '81 in the Flatwoods, Kentucky. Me and 3 friends in high school, ROTC class, were camping about 2 miles back in the woods from my house. About 3 a.m., we were rained out by a storm. On the way out, we noticed we were being paralleled in the woods about 20 to 30 yards from the road we were on. We would stop walking and feel the ground shake when it would take steps. When we stopped, it stopped. We took off running, and so did it. We could hear small trees being pushed over as it crashed through the woods. Once we ran to my house, my 3 friends dried off and slept on the couches in the living room. I went to bed in my room, but as I lay down on the bed, about 5 feet away from me on my bedroom window was a huge hand, palm on the glass. I noticed the size was about 12 to 16 inches long from heel of palm to end of fingers. The fingers looked to be about the size of kielbasa sausages. Strange, I know, but that was the first thing that registered. I also noticed that the hair draped off its arm about 18 to 24 inches long, hanging off the bottom of the arm. I froze. I could not move. I could only speak. I never told anyone back then. I feel more open about telling my story after speaking to a friend of mine who has one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard about Sasquatch, Sabe, or Bigfoot. My friend grew up on the New River in West Virginia before the dam was built. Here is his story, but shortened to save some time. When my friend was a kid, about 10 years old, he and his friends would spend every day in the summer down in the river playing. The first year they had their interaction was when they all noticed things in the woods across the river, 30 to 40 feet wide across with slow-moving water over rocks with wading pools. For about a week, the kids noticed that these things would move about, but the kids never really saw them. After a week, they would be gone. Then again, the next year, about the same time, they had their second interaction, but this time the kids could see them. They stayed up in the woods but allowed themselves to be seen. They never came closer that year, and they were gone. The next year, the interaction got closer and closer every summer until about the 6th year of this yearly interaction. The boys, at age 16 now, sat on one side of the water, and the family troop of Sabe would sit on the other side of the water about 35 feet away from each other, while the small ones would play in the water. This lasted about a week, and then they were gone for the year. The next summer, the boys made sure that they were down there early and sat down in the shallow water just a few feet from the bank. This was the year that physical contact was made. The Sabe, little ones, and the mothers would sit beside the boys in the water, and the small ones would splash about around the boys. This happened for about a week, and then they were gone. The boys were about 17. The last year interaction only lasted 1 day, and the boys never went back. The boys did the same routine, but this year they actually sat on the bank of the other side and waited for them to come out of the woods. The Sabe did. and continued to interact with the boys. The one thing I left out was the extremely large male that led this family group. As they approached the river, the Sabe would always wait for the large male to ascend a large rock that overlooked the area, but only a few feet away at all times, as if he was the overwatch. The leader stood well over 8 feet tall, and the boys were full grown by now, at 18 years old, and only came up to its lower chest. The big male was dark brown to black, but had a silver chest. The chest looked like it had an upside-down triangle of silver hair, with the wider part of the triangle on the top and narrowed as it went toward the waist. He controlled everything. My friend said the last time they had interaction was only the one day, because he, my friend, actually got on top of the rock where the silver chest would stand. The silver chest got on top of his rock and was only 5 feet away from my friend, and that is how he knew that it was almost 10 feet tall. My friend said he started to feel sick, and that is when he was spoken to, not by voice, but he could hear in his head. I can eat you at any time, and there's nothing you or your friends can do about it. It was then the pungent smell overwhelmed him, almost like he was finally allowed to smell them and understand them. My friend backed away and put his head down as he backed away from the silver chest. The other boys all started to wade across the water and slowly move away from the family troop. My friend says that after that, he and his friends never went back down there in the summer. My friend told me this story about 18 years ago, but he is still involved in the church and refuses to come forward in fear of being excommunicated from the church. I respect his wishes, and I trust this man beyond a shadow of a doubt. Why? Because I know what I saw. Thank you for doing what you're doing and allowing others to tell their experiences. I have my own thoughts on what these beings are. In Genesis 6, the Bible talks about sons of God having sexual interaction with human women and their offspring. Were known as Nephilim and giants. These beings were human-based with angelic mix. But also in the Dead Sea Scrolls, Book of Giants, and in the Book of Enoch, it talks about the 200 Watcher angels who mixed their DNA, so to speak, into animals, creating their own creations like they did with the women in Genesis 6. This time they used animals. And these offspring were known as the beasts. So if I take a polar bear and a black bear or a grizzly bear and then interject angelic DNA, or however the angels did it, I would get a hybrid creature. If I have a polar bear that lives in cold areas and is white and interject angelic whatever into it, and I do the same with the brown bears, black bears, and other bears, the result could be a common factor of the equivalent to a Yeti. Cold areas and covered in white fur, angelic in nature, what makes them able to dimension travel. As to brown bears or black bears, could yield a similar creature of dark fur and lives in temperate climates in woodland areas, and also shares the same angelic connection to allow them to also be able to disappear at any time. Is this how they came to be? I don't know. Just a theory from studying them since my first interaction as a freshman in high school. I just know whatever they are, they're here, and then they're gone. But I've heard so many different connections with lights, UFOs, cemeteries, and other strange phenomena that unidentified ape species is pretty much a no-go for me. Thanks again. You can use my name on your show. Doug Messer, Flatwoods, Kentucky. 55 years old, 20 years as a registered nurse, 84 to 93 as a U.S. Army and Reserve veteran. Doug, you're a brave man. A brave, honest man. Thanks for sending that in. What a frickin' crazy story, man. Your friend sharing that, he's not the only one to have interactions with these things like they did. Definitely not the only person to hear those words spoken in their head, scare the shit out of them. I don't know about the bear, the DNA. I guess it's just an example you're using, but after Dave Plattis and co, after they acquired the over 100 different various DNA samples, they all came out to the same conclusion. Every single different lab, not just Mel Ketchum, who the Bigfoot Sasquatch community attempted to annihilate, but every single different lab that they submitted samples to without telling what they were, all came up with the exact same findings. Unknown male, human female. Origin. But it never was there ever any bear mentioned in that DNA study, right? Except for the people that are looking for an excuse to throw out to the public, right? It's kind of handy. As a black bear, nothing to look at here. It's just black bear DNA. No big deal, right? What a bunch of pricks. Bunch of pricks. All right, changed my life. Please don't mention my name. You got it. I'm from Northeast Alberta. My experiences have followed me no matter where I've moved to. That sucks. I think I'm in the same boat. I love the outdoors, grew up on a farm. I was a lover of horses and farm animals. I'm not afraid of the dark. Helped with chores in the dark and played in the dark with family siblings. Loved it. My first experience when I was 13. I was playing with the neighborhood kids to go too long and had to, I was playing with the neighborhood kids too long and had to walk home the 1 mile in the dark. About halfway home, I could hear someone walking step for step in the poplar trees. I was terrified. I would run, it would run. If I stopped on a dime, it would also. My heart was in my throat. I was scared, as I thought it must have been a neighbor boy playing a joke on me, or I'm in danger of being raped. I had no idea of these things called Bigfoot. I ran as fast as I could. When I got to the edge of our driveway, it stopped there. I told my family about my experience, and they did not take me seriously. I was shaking. I wanted to close the curtains. One day we were all outside in the early afternoon, and all of a sudden a big poplar tree fell about 75 feet away from us on the edge of the yard. I immediately became frightened, hair standing on end, and said, "Let's get in the house." Mom said it's just a tree. I thought it must be a bear. I ran for the house and would not go out for some time. Nothing happened for years, just strange things. My husband and family went camping. Living on the farm, I know what coyotes sound like, and while camping near Bragg Creek, Alberta, the howling would just start before dark. The sound would go right through you. I would go into the camper again, their hair would stand on end. I'm a strong person, but this brings me to my knees. I moved to BC, and that's when it ramped up for me. One night I was alone and getting ready for bed, turned the light out and crawled in bed. The howling started about 600 meters down the driveway on an acreage. Again, I became extra alarmed. I could hear the heavy running. It sounded like more than one, and I knew it was heading for the house. It was silent for a second, and then one of them howled right by the window. Now, the window had to be 11 or 12 feet off the ground. The scream went right through my body. It felt so wicked. It paralyzed me. I couldn't move. I thought I would die here. It lasted for about 25 seconds. I don't know. I just lay there in total shock. I don't know how long I laid there, not moving a muscle, scared out of my mind. Then I felt so sleepy. I tried to stay awake, thought to stay awake, but I couldn't. I woke up several hours later and all was quiet, and the feeling was gone. From that time on, I became absolutely afraid of the dark, and to this day. Another happening was a year later, 2017. I always wake up so darn early. I try to sleep in, but always might as well get up and make coffee. Then I open the blinds to see the morning sunrise. Also, deer sometimes sleep close to the house, and I love seeing the big family. But this time, when I opened the blinds, standing there, 50 feet away, was a Bigfoot at least 10 feet tall. I could not see if it was male or female as the light was low. It was black, slim, not heavy in muscle or broad at the shoulders, from what I could see. I slowly closed the blind and said to myself, no, I don't want to see you. I've had growls in my bedroom window numerous times, and I freeze in place, hair on end. So, want these things to stop following me around. I moved back to Alberta, major city, and I could hear the howling from a city park after I go to bed shortly. Oh God, please no. I recognize the howling. How they know I am here. I think there is more to them than meets the eye. I want to go for walks in the parks, for exercise, but will not by myself. This is no different than all your emails sent into you. I still travel by myself, but I make sure that I'm at my destinations by the last light of day. I wish you well. I watch your YouTube videos. I admire how you have not let these darn things stop you from going into the wilderness. Thanks for reading, if you happen to. Thank you for sending that in. I totally feel for you. Feeling like it's that shit's following you around. It seems to with a lot of people, right? I don't know why. I don't know why. You know, Scott Carpenter's got some good advice for people who get constantly tormented by these things. You want to look into some of his information. It'd be very helpful. It's only there to help people, and that's it. It's funny, once you know these things are real, it's pretty hard to not constantly look to see if something's standing there watching you, right? I don't think it's possible for anyone to not look once you know they're there. Once you know they're there, and you become a member of the Club of No Return, there's no going back. It's not possible. Vancouver Island. That's where it happened to me the first time. And that's where I am now. Alright, let's get some shares going here. What do we got? Titled, One Night It All Changed. And how many of us are shaking our heads in agreement with that? Dear Steve, thanks for the platform and voice. My situation only a few know about, and others would think we're nuts. Let's get down to business. My late father was a Marine Corps Scout sniper. He taught me long-range shooting out past 800 yards at a young age. We would go hunting for deer, elk, black bear, with an average distance of 500 to 600 yards. One year, we were sitting on an outcrop of rocks, spotting a group of deer at about 400 yards, when all of a sudden, a large, hairy man stood up about 30 yards from the pack I was zeroing in on. My father tapped me on the shoulder saying, "Take the safety off." I told him I already did. We watched it cross down the mountain in the edge of a small pines until it hit a timber section, and that's the last we saw it. Now my tough-as-nails father was white as a ghost. I was shaken up and had more questions than I could answer. After a few moments, color came back to both of us, and we started back to camp. After breakfast, a couple of friends came back to camp and looked at us and said, "Did you see that?" I looked at them and said, "What?" What we both didn't know is that they were on the ridge about 600 yards to our right, looking down almost 90 degrees from it, and about the same distance away. They thought the same thing as us and came back to camp. The next morning we scouted out another spot we wanted to try, so my dad and I set off to check it out. We found a nice outcrop and waited for the sun to come up, which would backlight us, but we were well hidden. Spotting around the area, we found some deer across the valley. Still, before sunup, we could make out some silhouettes as sun started its upwards track. Now with the sun up, we could make out some nice bucks, and also found some nice elk further down the ridge, about 700 yards away. I waited for the muleys to come out of the wood line and lined up on one and took my shot. After following it and giving a fair amount of time, we started off down the ridge to the edge of the large, thick wood line. When we arrived, we found the impact site, the trail of blood, and we're about 30 or so yards away from its final resting spot. When we got there, the buck I shot wasn't there. End of story. And there you go. More people enter the Club of No Return, just like that. You know, I haven't had anything steal my animal off me yet. I've had a couple grizzly bears try to steal moose from me and an elk, but we took it back. But sometimes, you know, I kind of almost dread that experience. You know, the amount of effort that you put in to get your game animal harvested to bring home. And I would really be pissed off if something just up and stole it from me like that. It's never been a happy moment when grizzly bears try to steal it from you, but we just ride horses in there and take it back, and they move off. But I wouldn't want to have that happen to me. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, man. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club. Make sure you speak openly about it and honestly to everybody you can, all right? Bigfoot encounter. I'll make this story short. 1992, Maryland State Park. Me and two girls were swimming in a river when Jennifer looks up about 25 feet to the walking path above and said, "What is that?" I said it was a man walking. She said, "That's no man." I went into a panic. I took a closer look and got that god-awful feeling in my stomach. I was scared shitless. The only thing I could think of was to act like a dog and bark. I just kept on walking. It just kept on walking. Me and two other girls got the F out of there and didn't even talk about what happened. We said nothing to each other. For me, I felt ashamed for what I acted like. I didn't have a weapon at the time, and the thing could do to protect, and the thing I didn't have a weapon at the time, and the thing could do to protect the girls was to act like a dog. Oh, I guess the only thing you could do to protect the girls is act like a dog. I'm still feeling ashamed of myself. You can share this if you want to. I was 22 years old when this happened, so it's a big hit to my ego. I don't go into the woods without a gun now. Dude, don't worry about it, man. You know what? The things people do when they're scared is amazing. It's just a part of being a human being, all right? Everybody reacts differently. Everybody reacts how they can at the time. The stress these experiences cause your average person is incredible, all right? It's incredible, the amount of stress. I've had people, you'd believe the reactions I've seen people have just from calling in a bull elk, having it come in, or a huge moose, or else even having a grizzly bear experience. Everybody reacts differently, okay? So don't feel ashamed. You're alive. You're all alive. So whatever you did was all you could do, and it worked. Possibly, all right? Thanks for sending that in, man. What do we got here? Wisconsin, Price County encounter. Hello, Steve. Thanks so much for giving us a platform to share experiences and hopefully gain knowledge from each other. In November 2019, during the gun deer season, I was hunting with my brother and his wife in northern Wisconsin. We were roughly outside the small town of Park Falls in Price County on public land. Because the parking area only held about 4 or 5 vehicles, we decided to get there around 4 a.m. to ensure a parking spot. Not surprisingly, we were the first to arrive. To get to this parking area, you have to drive a gravel road for about 5 or 6 miles, so it's pretty far back in a massive state forest. We sat in the truck for about 30 minutes and then decided to head to our spots. This area was completely new to me, but my brother had done some scouting during bow season. It was snowing a decent amount, and the trail we headed down was an old logging road that splits to the left and right after about 100 yards from the parking area. As we headed down the left trail, my brother and sister-in-law were getting further ahead of me by about 25 yards or so. All of a sudden, to my left side, I heard the loudest growl/roar I have ever heard. It literally rattled my chest, and instant fear encompassed me. I had a pretty crappy headlight that only lit up about 10 feet in front of me and wasn't a good focus light at all. I saw about 15 yards to my left this massive, dark figure get up from what appeared to be a crouch position and stand on 2 legs about 7 or 8 feet tall. The eyes were glowing a yellowish color and appeared massive, like the size of saucer plates you might use for a cup of coffee. It continued a few lower growls at me while slowly turning its body away and walking away from me. I do not see a lot of detail of this creature, and how loud the first roar was made me instantly freeze in place, and I only got my rifle up to about my waist. I knew I wasn't going to shoot anything, and I didn't fully know what it was. At first I thought it may have been a wolf until it stood on 2 legs and had the outline of a person. Also, I instantly got the feeling from this thing that it was pissed I was there and saw it. I'm in my early 40s, been hunting since I was 12, and no other creature in the woods have I got this feeling from. The fear I had turned to anger as soon as I looked ahead at my brother and sister-in-law, expecting them to be running towards me, but they continued bumbling down the trail. I thought, how in the hell could they have not heard the growls? Finally, I yelled for them to hold up, and when I caught up to them, I asked them if they heard loud roar growls. They did not. When I told them what happened, I could tell they thought maybe it was a wolf. But what was burned into my mind was the width of the shoulders and its height when it stood upright. Even though all I could see was a dark outline, it was clearly not a wolf or a bear or idiot hiding in the woods on opening day of gun season. For the last couple of years, Steve, I've gone over this event and tried to come up with a logical solution, but the only thing that makes sense is this was a Sabe or Sasquatch. Let me tell you, sitting in the deep woods waiting for daybreak after this happened really sucked, especially considering we got in the woods so frickin' early. A few weeks ago I brought this up to both of them when we were at our parents' house having a campfire. They now fully believe what I saw was a Sabe. This area of Wisconsin has a lot of sightings as I found out looking for answers, which eventually led me to you. I don't think this was a coincidence. It decided to show itself to the last person on the trail, as David P. has pointed out many times. Thanks again for letting us share these encounters and for your informative hunting videos. Take care and God bless. I can't remember if you said to use your name or not, so I won't. But thanks for sending that in, man. It's funny. It's funny how it varies. A friend of mine owns a fishing lodge up in Cayuga, British Columbia, and he was guiding late season coho. What they do is they take inflatable boats and they go up a remote river and they fly fish or spin cast, whatever the client wants to do. But typically they fly fish for fall run coho, which is right about now. And they had gone up there, left the other fisher people. They left the Zodiac. He took another client. And they hiked way up the river. I believe he said around 400 or 500 yards, and they're around the bend from my side of the people back in the Zodiac. If anybody doesn't know what a Zodiac is, it's an inflatable rubber boat with a jet drive outboard in the back, so you go up the river. And he told me that they had this ridiculously loud, terrifying roar / scream come out of the woods above them on the other side of the river. And they turned around to get the hell out of there. And he told me that when they finally made it around the bend, they could see another 300 yards down to the Zodiac. The other people had already got the boat back in the water and were getting in it and getting ready to take off, because they heard it that loud and clear too. But it is funny how other people mention that only some people will hear it and some won't, right? It's like last fall when we had a few things happening where we went elk and moose hunting. And a friend of mine who is he studied psychology for years and got his degree in university back in Ireland, and he clearly heard that tree getting absolutely blasted right, like he said it was coming from right where I was, where I'd walked and left him to go get the quad, and he said it was coming from right where I was, and I didn't hear nothing. And I never walk noisy, ever. I never ever walk noisily in the forest, and he said he didn't hear the quad motor at all yet, and I couldn't have been there quite to the quad yet. But it is odd, isn't it? Sometimes some people can hear something and other people in the immediate area don't hear nothing. It's very, very confusing. Thanks for sending that in. Another member of the Club of No Return. Encounter while hunting in southern Georgia. Steve, how's it going, man? I want to start this email off by saying thank you for everything you're doing with the YouTube channel. I have the utmost respect for people like yourself who dedicate time out of their life to bring awareness to certain topics and seek the truth. It's very hard to come by these days, which is unfortunate. However, the amount of people you're helping out is absolutely amazing, and is also reassuring there are still great people out there who give a damn. Thanks for those kind words and words of support, man. And just so you know, You know, it's myself and it's every single person who's shared their experience here. We're all in that same boat of helping each other, all right? It's definitely a group effort. I've been following your channel for quite some time now. I look forward to every new video you come out with. My name is Colton, 25. I was born and raised here in Jacksonville, Florida. I've grown up hunting and fishing my whole life. I've always had a fascination with being out in the woods ever since I can remember. I grew up learning and teaching myself survival skills out in the woods for years, and also spending time putting those skills to use. I believe it's very important for everyone to have some sort of knowledge on how to survive out in the wilderness. Anyways, on to the story. So a few years ago, back in 2015, myself and one of my best friends I've known my entire life had been getting ready for deer season up near Kingsland, Georgia. Just right past the Florida/Georgia border. Mind you, this property is out in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking a place where no one would ever find you. As you know, this makes an ideal /prime hunting spot. This property was owned by his grandfather. Half was used as a pine tree farm, the other part was for hunting. There are parts of this property that have been untouched for years and years. On my opening day, we get up there around 4:30 a.m. There is one tree stand, one ground blind, and one condo stand that sits about 15 feet above the ground. We had planned on sitting in different stands that morning. However, as we were making the long walk out to the stands, something wasn't sitting right. Without saying anything during the walk, we both turned to each other and said, "Why don't we hunt the condo stand together?" Normally on an early morning hunt, I'm still half asleep looking forward to shutting my eyes till the sun starts coming up. However, on this morning I was on full alert mode. My eyes were as wide open as they could go, and my senses were extremely heightened. This was the first time I've ever felt uneasy during a hunt. It was a feeling that's very hard to describe. It was absolutely dead silent. Even as the sun started to come up, you could hear a nut drop from a tree 50 yards away. The silence was so unusual considering squirrels are normally running around sounding like a damn pack of hogs. The sun was slowly starting to peek through the trees with a heavy layer of fog sitting low in the woods. Directly in front of the stand was a shooting lane that went about 40 yards. As a young doe came out and was eating the corn we had out, however, we weren't interested in her. A few moments later, this god-awful scream/roar/yell came out about 60 yards in front of us. Steve, when I tell you I've never heard anything like this sound before, it's because I haven't. The sound lasted for a little over 10 seconds, then a few more short bursts of it as it started barreling through the woods towards our direction. We were both frozen in our chairs, eyes glued back, and looked at each other like, what in God's name is that? The first words out of my mouth was that a effing lion, bro? My buddy looked at me in disbelief, not saying anything. The sound was absolutely terrifying and shook everything around us. There's no animal in South Georgia that makes a sound like that. After it charged through the woods in our direction, it stopped for a moment. The doe took a right turn and bolted through the woods doing a button hook. The thing that had stopped all of a sudden did a few more of its roars/yells and bolted to where it was parallel with the shooting lane about 30-40 yards from us and took off in the direction of the doe. You could hear this damn thing for another 150-200 yards. It never was close enough to where we could see it. Plus the fog mixed with the sun rising to our face made it difficult to see very far into the woods. We didn't see anything else that morning, unfortunately. We got down for the morning hunt to go check out the area this thing came from, or where we thought we first heard it was this area in the middle of the property which had tons of leftover timber and mulch. There was clearly a significantly large path of brush that looked like a damn tractor had knocked over around that area that matched up with where it was running. About a month later, near the skinning rack, there was the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen. It wasn't black bear scat or anything of the nature either. Me and my buddy still talk about this incident every once in a while after a few beers. And after the few years that have gone by, it's still extremely vivid in both our minds. Thankfully, this experience has not kept myself or him from going back out in the woods and hunting. For anyone listening, if there's any experience like this, don't be afraid of getting back out there. We can't let these beings keep us from enjoying things we love doing. Thankfully, I haven't had any more encounters, and every time I'm out in the woods, I don't let any of those thoughts cross my mind. It's very important to compartmentalize your thoughts when you're focusing on certain tasks at hand. As for you, Steve, I thank you again, sir, for everything you're doing. You're a great man, and I look up to you. One day I hope I'm able to go on a hunt with you. Ever since I first started watching your hunting videos, I've wanted to go on one of your guided hunts. Keep up the incredible work, Steve. Much love and respect. Stay safe out there. Colt. Thanks for that share, Colton. Thanks for that share, man. Thanks for sharing that with everybody. And thanks for giving everybody the encouragement to not quit doing what they love. It's very important. I'm so glad to hear that you and your buddy are still out there giving her. Still doing it. And one of these days, you know what I'd like to do? As soon as the dark powers that be stop with all this horse shit about travel and borders and control, I would love to go down south again and let's just do a great big tour during the entire hunting season and go down there and meet a whole pile of people from this channel and go hunting and share stories and share the time of the hunt together. You know, I think that would be really cool. Anyway, I gotta get going here pretty quick. My tummy's telling me it's time to go home for hunger, for food. See if I can get one more up before I go. Invisible thing in the woods. Here we go again. Hey Steve, I'm not a writer, so please excuse me. My name is Joe, and I've been in the woods hunting and the Marine Corps my 56 years of life. I live in west central Wyoming. Last year I was deer hunting. It was an early November evening. The sun was setting and the full moon was already in the sky. I was standing by a ravine watching some small fawns walk in the ravine when I heard something much bigger walking past me, going up towards the top of the hill. Now there was only 50 feet from my position to the cattle pasture and sparse woods between. I could hear something walking in the leaves 20 to 30 feet from me on the other side of the ravine, yet I couldn't see it. I stood there and watched. The leaves weren't moving, but I could clearly hear something walking. I decided to take 3 steps up to see if I could spook whatever this was. When I did, it ran up farther and then came back towards me from what I heard, but still I couldn't see it. So I decided to stomp up another 20 or 30 feet, breaking branches as I moved. Again, it moved away, then it came back towards me. I repeated this one more time until I was straight across from a wash that ran into the ravine. I could see the entirety of the wash and could still hear the large sounding thing in the wash, but I couldn't see anything. I had a feeling that whatever this thing is, it's trying to get me to come into the ravine. I fought the feeling of curiosity off and got the hell out of there and have never been back. I'm still curious of what it could have been. I'll probably go back there soon, but I won't be alone. Thanks for all you do, and it does help to talk about it. P.S. I've told people, and not one person has laughed at me. Joe, thanks for that email, man. I don't have any experience of myself with anything of that sort, although by the sounds of it, thousands of people have. Don't forget that one woman sitting in a tree stand actually filmed it, but she saw something, but she didn't, but she did, right? You see something is somewhat invisible, and that is some scary shit. And especially if you feel that thing is trying to get you to go in the ravine. I suggest to anybody, if you have something similar like that happen to you, get out of Dodge. Just turn around and get out of Dodge and go away from that area. Just go away. But anyway, Dave Polaris probably have a lot more to say on that flavor of topic than me. He's a lot more familiar with a lot more stranger things going on, right? And he's not giving up on sharing the information. it's time to go. Time to go. Things to do, food to eat as soon as I get home. Barns to build. I gotta go help a neighbor put a roof on his house tomorrow. I gotta continue trying to get my barn done, and then and squeeze out some more email shares as well. Every chance I get, I'm gonna keep getting every single person's voice heard here. Every chance I get until we get to the end of the list, if that's even possible. We'll see, won't we? And then I'll take you guys on adventure up north again when I go. Here we go. I'll take a quick look around, see where I am here, and what I've been looking up. We're looking up at that tree line when I look. Had to turn on the autofocus, but that's what I've been looking at for the hell of it, out of habit. I normally do anytime I'm anywhere. I'm always checking the timber edge. I'm also checking that one out. There you go. I'm out of here.